Most people think heart attacks announce themselves. Chest pain, left arm going numb, a dramatic collapse. That's what the movies show. That's what most people expect. But after 60, the most dangerous cardiac events are the quiet ones, the ones that build slowly while you sleep. No warning, no time to call for help, no second chance. And here is what shocks most of my patients when I tell them this in the recovery room. Those events are almost always triggered by something ordinary, something completely unremarkable, something you did before turning off the light. I'm Dr. Kevin Adewale. I'm a cardiac surgeon. I've spent over 20 years opening chests, repairing arteries, and holding hearts in my hands. I've also spent 20 years watching the same preventable patterns repeat themselves over and over in patients who had no idea what they were doing to themselves every single night. Tonight, I'm going to show you 5 of those patterns, 5 habits that are quietly loading the gun while you sleep. And then I'll show you exactly how to unload it, one simple evening at a time. Stay with me. What you learn in the next few minutes may be the most important thing you hear this year. Here's something most people don't know. Your cardiovascular system doesn't take a break when you fall asleep. It shifts gears. In a healthy body, nighttime is when your blood pressure naturally dips, usually 10 to 20% lower than during the day. Your heart rate slows. Your arteries relax. It's a biological reset, a form of maintenance the body has been running for your entire life. But after 60, that system becomes less reliable. The blood vessels stiffen. The pressure regulation gets less precise. Certain hormonal signals that used to protect the heart at night, they start to weaken. And the margin for error gets much, much smaller. Think of it this way. During the day, your cardiovascular system has backup mechanisms. It can compensate. It can adapt. At night, many of those mechanisms are offline. The body is running on a skeleton crew. That's what makes the night different after 60. That's why the hours between midnight and 6 in the morning carry the highest risk of heart attack and stroke for people over 60. Not the afternoon, not the morning rush. The quiet hours. The hours when no one is watching, but your habits are. Now here's the part that changes everything. What happens during those dangerous hours is largely determined by what you did before bed, the meal you ate, the pill you took or didn't take, the temperature in your room, decisions that felt completely routine. That's what we're going to talk about, starting right now with the one that surprises my patients the most. Let me ask you something. What time did you eat dinner last night? And what was on the plate? I ask every patient that question, and for a surprising number of people over 60, the answer is somewhere around 8 or 9 at night, sometimes 10 at night. A full meal, pasta, rice, meat, maybe something fried, followed by the couch, then bed within an hour or two. I understand why it happens. Busy days, family schedules, the habit of a lifetime. But from a cardiac standpoint, this habit is quietly harming your heart. A heavy meal late at night is one of the most underestimated stresses your heart faces. Here's what's happening inside your body. When you eat a large meal, your digestive system demands an enormous increase in blood flow. Your heart has to pump harder. Blood pressure rises. Triglycerides, the fats in your blood, spike sharply within 2 to 4 hours after eating. Now layer that on top of going to sleep. Your body expects the evening to be a wind down, not an all-hands cardiovascular emergency. Instead, your heart is working overtime to digest a full dinner, while simultaneously trying to shift into its nighttime recovery mode. Those two demands are in direct conflict. And in a person over 60 with any degree of arterial stiffness, that conflict has real consequences. Studies have consistently shown that eating within 2 to 3 hours of sleep is associated with elevated nighttime blood pressure, higher rates of acid reflux that can mimic and trigger cardiac symptoms, and increased risk of cardiovascular events during sleep. The fix is not complicated. Finish your main meal by 6 or 7 in the evening. Keep late meals light, protein and vegetables, not heavy fats. Does your dinner schedule look anything like what I just described? You'd be surprised how many people answer yes and never connected it to their heart. Now this one, I need you to take very seriously, because this is where the most preventable damage happens in my clinical experience. If you are over 60 and you take medication for high blood pressure, statistically, more than 60% of people in that age group do. The timing of that medication matters enormously. more than most doctors take time to explain. For most people, blood pressure follows a predictable curve through the day. It rises in the morning, peaks in the afternoon, dips at night. But a significant portion of people over 60, particularly those with hypertension, don't get that nighttime dip. Their pressure stays elevated, or it actually surges during the early morning hours. This condition is called nocturnal hypertension, and most people have never heard of it, and it is dangerous in ways that daytime high blood pressure is not. While you sleep, the arterial walls are not braced for impact. A pressure surge at 3 in the morning hits the arterial walls very differently than one at 3 in the afternoon. It's more likely to rupture a vulnerable plaque inside a coronary artery, more likely to trigger clot formation, more likely to send someone to my table. If you take your blood pressure medication only in the morning, it may wear off by the time you need it most. If you forget it entirely, you may be leaving yourself completely unprotected during the most vulnerable hours of the night. What should you do? Talk to your doctor specifically about timing. Ask whether your medication should be taken at night rather than in the morning. The conversation takes 2 minutes. It could save your life. There is strong evidence, including the Hygeia chronotherapy trial, that evening dosing of blood pressure medication significantly reduces cardiovascular risk during sleep. That is not a minor adjustment. That is a potentially life-saving conversation to have. Don't assume the timing doesn't matter. In cardiology, timing can be the entire difference. And most patients over 60 have never once had this conversation with their doctor. I want you to think about someone you know who snores. A spouse, a parent, maybe yourself. That sound, that loud, irregular rumbling in the night, most people treat it as an annoyance, something to laugh about, something to elbow your partner over. I treat it as a cardiac warning sign until proven otherwise. After 20 years in this field, I mean that literally. Sleep apnea is one of the most underdiagnosed and underestimated conditions I encounter in patients over 60. It's estimated that over 30% of older adults have some form of it, and the vast majority have never been diagnosed or treated. They have absolutely no idea what it is doing to their heart every single night. Here's what actually happens during an apnea episode. You stop breathing for 10 seconds, 40 seconds, sometimes longer. It might happen dozens of times per hour. Each time, the oxygen level in your blood drops sharply. Your brain registers a crisis and fires off a stress response. Adrenaline, cortisol, a sudden spike in heart rate and blood pressure. Your heart jolts, awake, essentially, while the rest of you is still asleep. Night after night, year after year. Now imagine that happening 30, 40, 50 times in a single night. What that does to the cardiovascular system is not subtle. Sleep apnea is directly associated with a 3 times higher risk of heart attack. That number alone should stop you cold. It is strongly linked to irregular heart rhythms, including atrial fibrillation, which itself dramatically raises stroke risk. It accelerates the thickening and stiffening of arterial walls. And because the person is asleep for all of it, they often have no idea until something serious happens. The warning signs are not always obvious. Yes, loud snoring is one, but there are others. Watch for waking up with headaches, feeling exhausted even after a full night of sleep, needing to urinate frequently during the night, waking up with a dry mouth or a feeling of choking. If any of those sound familiar, talk to your doctor about a sleep study. Here's what I tell my patients directly. If you snore heavily, you're over 60, and you have any history of heart disease or stroke, getting evaluated for sleep apnea is not optional. It is part of your cardiac care. Full stop. The treatment, most commonly a CPAP device, is not glamorous. I know that. But the data on what it does for heart health is remarkable. Patients who comply with CPAP therapy show measurable reductions in blood pressure, lower rates of atrial fibrillation, and significantly reduced cardiac risk. One device, one habit, enormous protection. Does anyone in your household snore? Have you ever been told you stop breathing in your sleep? Think carefully before you move on from this one. This next habit is driven by something completely logical. And that's exactly what makes it so easy to overlook. Many people over 60 deliberately limit how much they drink in the evening. The reason makes perfect sense. They want to avoid waking up at 2 in the morning to use the bathroom. Disrupted sleep is uncomfortable. Getting up at night increases fall risk, so they cut fluids after dinner, sometimes after 4 in the afternoon. I understand the reasoning completely, but from a cardiovascular standpoint, going to bed even mildly dehydrated is a meaningful risk factor, and one that almost nobody talks about. When you are dehydrated, your blood becomes more viscous, thicker. It doesn't flow as freely through your vessels. For a young cardiovascular system, that's a manageable inconvenience. For a person over 60 dealing with arterial stiffness and plaque, it's a very different story. Thick blood moves slowly through already narrowed arteries. It is more prone to forming clots. And here's the timing problem most people don't consider. During sleep, your heart rate naturally slows. Blood moves more slowly through the system anyway. Now combine slow circulation with thicker blood in a body that has been lying still for 7 or 8 hours, in arteries that may already be narrowed. That combination, dehydration, slow heart rate, reduced movement, and vessel disease, is one of the reasons strokes and heart attacks cluster in the early morning hours. The fix here is genuinely simple. Drink a full glass of water before bed. Not a large amount, just 8 ounces. That's all it takes. Enough to ensure your blood isn't thickening unnecessarily while you sleep. Keep another glass on your nightstand for when you wake up. That moment of mild thirst at 2 in the morning. Your body is asking for something your heart also needs. You don't have to choose between sleep and cardiovascular protection. Here's one that surprises almost every patient I mention it to, because it sounds almost too simple to matter. What temperature is your bedroom at night? Most people have never once thought about it in terms of heart health. They think about comfort. They think about personal preference. But there is a specific range that your cardiovascular system prefers. And outside of that range, your heart is quietly working harder than it should be. Let's start with too warm. When your bedroom is above about 22 degrees Celsius, roughly 72 Fahrenheit, your body works to dissipate heat throughout the night. Your blood vessels dilate. Your heart rate stays elevated. Sweating increases fluid loss, which brings us right back to the dehydration problem we just discussed. And critically, your sleep quality drops. You spend less time in the deep, restorative stages where the heart gets its best overnight recovery. Now the opposite. A bedroom that is genuinely cold, below 16 or 17 degrees Celsius, creates a different kind of cardiovascular stress. Cold causes vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels tighten to preserve core body heat. Blood pressure rises. The heart has to push against more resistance. For someone with existing coronary artery disease or hypertension, that nighttime pressure increase is not trivial. The optimal range for sleep and cardiovascular protection is between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius. 65 to 72 Fahrenheit. That window keeps your body in thermoneutral territory. Vessels relaxed, heart rate low and steady. Sleep stays deep. One setting. Real protection. Everything I've described so far might sound like a long list of things to worry about. I want to reframe that completely. Because when you look at all 5 habits together, what you actually have is a blueprint. A simple, practical evening routine that addresses every single one. I call it the heart-safe evening routine. And it fits into a normal life without any dramatic changes. Here's how it looks. Between 6 and 7 in the evening, that's your window for the main meal. Lean protein, vegetables, a moderate portion of carbohydrates if you need them. Not a feast, not a fast, just a proper dinner at a civilized hour, giving your heart a full 3 to 4 hours to settle before sleep. At 7 o'clock, water and medications. If your doctor hasn't specifically discussed the timing of your blood pressure medication with you, this is your reminder to have that conversation. Evening dosing may be significantly more protective. Take that question seriously. Between 8 and 9, your wind-down window. A gentle walk, some reading, a calm conversation. This is the time to step away from screens, particularly bright phone screens, which suppress melatonin and keep the nervous system alert far longer than it should be before sleep. By 9 o'clock, check your bedroom. Adjust the thermostat. Open a window briefly. Set a glass of water on the nightstand. These take 90 seconds. They matter. By 10, you're in bed. And here is one final detail that costs you absolutely nothing. If you snore, or if you've been told you stop breathing during sleep, try sleeping on your side rather than your back. Back sleeping worsens airway obstruction dramatically. A simple positional change can reduce apnea episodes significantly while you work toward a formal evaluation. Dinner by 7. Water and pills at 7. Calm evening until 9. Room prepared by 9. Bed by 10 on your side. The question is never whether this routine works. The data is clear that it does. The question is whether you'll actually do it, and that's a question only you can answer. Now, I want to be honest with you for a moment. Not as a content creator, as a surgeon. I have stood at an operating table at 3 in the morning, holding a heart that stopped because of a clot that formed overnight in a narrowed artery. I have spoken to families in waiting rooms at dawn. Families who had no idea anything was wrong when they said goodnight a few hours earlier. I have read autopsy reports on people who were planning their grandchildren's birthdays the week before. And in case after case, the contributing factors were not mysterious. They were a late dinner, a skipped medication, a bedroom that was too warm, a body that was quietly running out of water, an airway that had been collapsing silently for years, while everyone assumed the snoring was just snoring. These are not exotic risk factors. They are not rare. They are the background noise of millions of ordinary evenings. And that background noise, accumulated night after night, year after year, can become a cardiac event that nobody saw coming, because nobody knew to look. Here is the truth that 20 years in the operating room has given me. Most of the hearts I've had to repair didn't fail because of bad luck. They failed because of bad information. Information the patient simply never had. You now have it. The question is, what you do with it tonight. Not next week, not after your next checkup. Tonight. Let's bring it all together. 5 habits, 5 fixes. I want you leaving with a clear action plan, not a vague sense of worry. 1. Finish your main meal by 6 or 7 in the evening. Not a radical diet, just a reasonable dinner at a reasonable hour. 2. Talk to your doctor about the timing of your blood pressure medication. Ask specifically about evening dosing. That single conversation could be the most important medical discussion you have this year. 3. If you snore, if you wake up exhausted, if anyone has ever told you that you stop breathing in your sleep, get evaluated for sleep apnea. This is not optional at 60 plus. It is part of taking your heart seriously. 4. Drink a glass of water before bed. Keep one on the nightstand. Do not let your blood thicken overnight because you were trying to avoid a bathroom trip. 5. Set your bedroom between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius, 65 to 72 Fahrenheit. That simple number protects your vessels and costs you nothing. Now I want to ask you something directly, and I genuinely want you to answer in the comments below. Which of these 5 habits do you recognize in yourself? I have a strong feeling at least 2 or 3 hit close to home. You're not alone in that. Most of my patients recognize themselves in this list. The difference is, you now know what to do about it. If this video gave you something useful, please share it. There is someone in your life, a spouse, a sibling, a friend, someone over 60 who has never once connected their nightly habits to their heart. Send it to them. Take care of that heart. It has been working for you every single minute of every single night for your entire life. Give it the conditions it needs to keep going. One last thing. Everything I've shared here is general medical information based on current cardiovascular research and my own clinical experience. It is not a substitute for your personal medical care. Before you make any changes to your medication schedule, especially, please talk to your own physician. That's not a legal disclaimer. That's genuine advice from someone who wants you still watching this channel 10 years from now. Good night.